So I was inspired to make this video today because of a transition that I'm going through in my life between hustle culture to a more feminine, less busy time of my life, and all of the lessons that I'm learning and going over from moving from one period to the other. So I thought this was a really important message to put out because I used to preach the hustle culture, and to a degree I still do, because I believe it's important for people to be self-sufficient and not stay in the bottom ring of life, because I don't think that you're going to be happy on that side either. But I've noticed that the American lifestyle, or maybe the Western ideology that people talk about all the time, is very detrimental to our psychology. And I went there and I did that after going from the have-not to the have and swinging from one polarity to the other. And as I tell you guys all the time, happiness is usually found in the balance of two things, or the integration of two things. It's just a rule of life. I don't know why it's like that. It's like that. You know, we crave regulation. And I upgraded my life after coming from a background of poverty and being in also relational situations where, you know, we were doing bill splitting and stuff because individually we couldn't pay bills on our own. So I had this one, obviously the hunger to be self-sufficient, and then I just had the hunger to want to get further in life and be a provider for my family because of certain things that were going on. So some of it was by choice, and some of it was the natural ambition that I have as a person who likes to achieve, and a person who it likes to explore and have curiosity and always be doing things. And I'm a Gemini with a lot of energy, whatever. Some of it was very natural and very fun, but the other side of it was kind of this addictive cycle that happens. And I realized I was just feeding into corporate America, which I try to preach against a lot of the time. So I was also becoming a little bit of a hypocrite and getting into this cycle where I was too busy for my own good, and the type of income I was making was just, it was not satisfying me, and it was becoming more work than anything else. So I wanted to go over what upgrading did for me as a pro, and what downgrading did for me as a pro, and how the contentment that we're searching for typically isn't found in the pursuit a lot of us are going for right now. And I know we all say that, like we say that, but it's different. You see it a lot different when you've been there, done that, and then you come back out of it and you're like, this didn't do what I thought it was going to do, right? So I just want to give an encouraging word to everybody who thinks that striving more or achieving more or whatever is going to be that thing that brings you relief. And to a degree it does. But I really wanted to put this video out because of almost warning people of a cycle you may get caught in that you didn't see coming when you seek a certain lifestyle, and understanding that you don't really want to upgrade your life as much as you might think. From looking at it from the outside, you feel like you want to do or have a lot more. But having experienced both sides of the equation, I want to break down a couple things that you guys want to be mindful of in your pursuit, and not to discourage the pursuit, but to give you guys a new perspective so you can hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that I did on my way there, and avoid falling into the pitfall of more, and the addictions that come along with success. And I don't mean getting addicted to drugs or whatever it is, but there's so many psychological addictions that I want to give you guys a heads up on. So one really important point, sorry, I'm silencing a phone call. One really important point is something that was mentioned in a Black Mirror episode called 15 Million Merits. If you guys haven't seen it, I would watch it. It's pretty good. Or at the very least, I'll put a link in the description for Bing's speech at the end. He says, that everything that they're striving for is to just be in a bigger cell with a bigger screen. So one thing that happened to me was upgrading the type of housing I lived in and upgrading my vehicle. I didn't do it to keep up with the Joneses, and I didn't do it to show off to everybody what I had. I genuinely liked muscle cars, and I really wanted to know what the experience was like to live in a nicer place after having lived in these very like run down, borderline unsafe types of places. So when I was going to upgrade, I spent a little extra and went a little bit above maybe what I should have, but I was really hungry to know what that lifestyle was like, and being on the other side of the equation, because I craved it so badly, being on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I did that. It was nice. I'm not going to say that it wasn't nice or that I didn't enjoy myself, because I very much did. But you don't necessarily feel different. Like right now I'm sitting inside of, I have a Dodge Challenger, okay? And the inside of it right now looks like me sitting on the inside of any other car, right? And you guys probably wouldn't know what type of vehicle I have looking at the videos from here, because it really doesn't feel that different when you're driving the car. Like, sure, if you maybe go race somebody or whatever it is, or you put mods on your car or whatever, but just in general, in my day in, day out activities and driving to work and doing my errands and all that, it feels like I'm driving a normal vehicle. Other people from the outside can look at my car when I'm driving by and understand it's a Challenger, it's a nice car or whatever. But in your day in, day out pursuit, it doesn't feel that different. And I also, again, I upgraded the apartment that I was living in, and I upgraded to a 3-bedroom apartment that I was paying for by myself, which was great because I was using the alternate rooms for things like producing and practicing my music, and I had an art room and all that. So it was nice to compartmentalize everything, and I did quite enjoy myself. But again, in my day in, day out actions, I didn't feel different as a human being. My environment almost felt like it was too much. I felt happy to walk into something that looked nice, but when I was going through all of my normal activities, I almost felt out of place. So some of it, I guess, was an imposter syndrome, but I also felt really out of place because it wasn't the type of home, simple feel, because it was a little more upscale that I was used to. And I also didn't see a difference, taking a shower or drawing. A lot of the time I would go outside to make my art anyway, because I'm really messy whenever I do things. And watching TV sitting on my couch, it felt exactly the same as if I were doing it in my old rundown apartment. I also had this tiny little, I want to say it was like 600 square foot cottage that I was splitting with my best friend in the middle of the ghetto, mind you, which I actually moved back to now and where I'm sitting now. And it almost felt more like home, given it could be just because I was used to that. I was used to poverty growing up, but it almost felt more like home being there than when I upgraded on my own and had all the things that looked outwardly successful. It felt displaced. It felt very isolating in a way, because I moved to an area where like not a lot of my friends and family were around because they didn't live that kind of lifestyle. I just didn't feel like a different person. I was able to buy more things, I was able to stock my fridge a little bit more. I was able to never worry about having gas in my car. So those things I think felt a little bit more important to me than the upgrading of lifestyle that everybody's trying to pursue. And then the other side of the equation that happened was obviously the amount I was paying every month just to live was quite high. And even though I could afford it, I was working more and paying more money towards that to essentially feel the same that I felt before. Except the only difference now was I had to work more often and I had to produce a lot more money. And this is the cycle where we get the American dream and why we all consider it to be a scam, right? Everybody wants to live in a place that is safe. Everybody wants to live in a place that has functioning electricity and water and all that, and have the basics, and then not worry about whether or not you can afford your bills and all of that. And I think that we equate having more or having nicer things with that idea of security. And one thing I found out very quickly was that is not related at all. If anything, you actually kind of lose security when you upgrade your lifestyle or you maintain the same level of it, because I was living within my means for sure, but proportionally, I would say proportionally in spending, it went up a lot, but proportionally to what I was making, everything stayed about the same. I was spending about the same percentage of my paycheck on my car or my housing or whatever it was. And housing went up a little bit proportionally, but compared to my paycheck versus what I was paying out, it was roughly the same. But I was working a lot more and working crazy hours to get that type of money to afford that type of lifestyle. And all I was doing was the thing I talked about in 15 Million Merits, where you upgraded to a bigger jail cell that feeds corporate America or feeds real estate or whatever. And I quickly realized how much of a scam it was. And the apartment I was staying in also took every opportunity to charge people for this and that, and took every opportunity to spike the rent like crazy, like how it is in Florida right now. I don't know what it's like in other states, but all of that combined, I realized I was essentially working for nothing. And even though I was producing more money, I was producing more money for other people. And when people, even if you get a house and get a mortgage and stuff like that, you are paying to eventually own that property, but then you're paying out interest to people, or you're putting a large down payment on to pay somebody else out, and in order to finance the building. And a lot of people finance their vehicles. So what's really happening is you're just paying even more money to feed somebody else's paycheck, and you think that you have won, or you think that you're successful because you're producing more, you're making more, but it's going right out of your pocket the same way it was before. And this is why I downgraded and live the lifestyle that I live now. It's a little bit better than what I was living in when I was in poverty. And this is that middle ground that I talk about, but it's not extravagant. I kept the same vehicle, obviously. I think eventually I might downgrade this vehicle, or credit is something I'm working on. My credit's decent, but I want to bring it up even higher. So maybe when my credit is a little bit better, I might to be honest, I don't really know, but I might do something in relation to the car to get something cheaper. But I downgraded my living situation, and it tremendously saved me a lot of money. And now that I'm living far above my means, I would say my life is more comfortable and happier now than when I was doing all of this nice stuff, or I guess keeping up with the Joneses, like people say. But a lot of the time when they say that, it's because you want this outward expression so people will look at you like you have something. But for me, it was just wanting to go through the experience because I had never had it. It was never to convince people that I'm something, or to get people to think I'm something. It was never about the outward view. It was about the inward experience. But regardless, I would say that it was still kind of a keeping up with the Joneses lifestyle. And I wasn't happy anymore. I did also want to stop working as much as I did, because it was just work, and train at the gym and train acrobatics and then go to sleep and repeat the whole thing. I didn't have a social life. I did not really have time to invest in simple activities that I like to do by myself, like making more art and being passionate about that. So I had all this stuff, and I didn't have much fun or meaningful life experience. And this is what happens to a lot of people when they become successful. And this is why the hustle becomes an addiction and something that we preach, because you'll trap yourself in a cycle where the hustle becomes all you are, and will consume the entirety of your being, to the point where you have the illusion of having a life, but you don't really have a life. And this was very short-lived. This was like a 2-year period for me, where I slowly descended into that. But I want to warn people about this, because you're really not going to produce the lifestyle that you think you're going to produce by having all of this outward success. And people say that it's overrated, because it really is overrated. Because what happens internally when you create that environment externally is everything becomes about produce more money, keep the money going, keep the money going. I cannot slow down. I can't slow down. Work, work, work. And your life revolves around this thing that you really hate or don't really like that much, because nobody really likes money or loves money. I suppose some people do, but in and of itself, not a lot of people actually really like money or put a lot of value on money. We put a lot of value on the freedom money gives us. We put a lot of value on the experiences money can bring to us, but nobody puts actual value on money, the paper or the electronic number itself. And there's a reason for that, because the momentum that success creates will internally flip that, where the experience begins revolving around the money instead of the money revolving around the experience, which is really what we're searching for when we try to have success. So on top of living below your means, I would also encourage people to understand that you don't really want as much money as you think you do. And you also don't want the type of lifestyle that comes with that, because as soon as it starts gaining momentum in your life, money will create its own gravity as an energy, and it will take from you to produce more of that energy. And that's why we see a lot of capitalist or corporate America being fed by that. And this outward illusion or the pageantry that comes with success. And I have this, I have that. This is what my house looks like. This is what my car looks like. This is what, I'm wearing Gucci or Givenchy or whatever name brand. It doesn't even have to be like the way up there. Michael Kors, Calvin Klein, all of that image is a pageant. It's a thing people put on to look a certain way for a certain time. And people do a lot of what I call wearing their success, and you can wear it in the version of a car or a house, right? The money has already been pulled out and transformed into something else. So it's not something somebody actually has. It's something that has been produced and used, and now that allocation of resources is already there. So you don't actually have any wealth if you're wearing it or using it all the time. So on top of the fact that you want to live below your means, it's okay to not look successful while being successful, and you will get a lot further having less and doing more with it, and creating a plan for that than you would trying to have excessive amounts and trying to produce with it. Because again, you'll create this momentum that is all about production of money, and that money typically a lot of the time is not going to you, it's going to somebody else. This is why I talk all the time when we come from the ghetto or we come from poverty, that name brands are actually something, in my opinion, people need to stay away from, because what you're doing is feeding somebody else's capitalist or consumer or what is the word I want to look for here? But you're essentially feeding somebody else's dream. You're giving away thousands of dollars, especially when I see people with the Gucci sandals and stuff. If you are genuinely about that style, that's great. Wear it. do it, do your thing. I'm not going to tell people not to like the things that they like, but I think a lot of the time we convince ourselves that we like it because we know we're going to get a certain response when we wear or do certain things. And with that lifestyle comes a whole slew of problems where you're just constantly giving away your money and giving away your wealth, and you're working harder for it, and you're looking again externally like you have wealth that you don't actually have, because you've given your wealth over to somebody else who is using that money either more productively or to keep feeding the cycle for other people to buy into it. And you're also giving the impression in your mindset that to other people, like you're being a leader. As a successful leader, this is why I felt so important, it was so important to put this out. As a successful leader, if you are truly successful, you want to be setting a precedent, and you want to be setting a good example of what success really means and what it's supposed to be bringing to you. And you're putting that image into everybody's mind that this is what we're really about, this is what we're striving for, and you're feeding the cycle over and over with these sorts of lifestyles as well. And if you're sitting in the middle of it, knowing that you're exasperated, knowing you're giving away your wealth, knowing that you're not creating legacy for yourself, or like in the Schoolboy Q song where he says, you'll buy a chain, but you won't buy no land. That hashtag should say desperate. The reason that's happening, or patterns similar to that happening, like what he discusses in the song, is because you're so concerned and desperate for the attention and the self-esteem of looking like you have wealth by buying the chain, that you won't actually invest your wealth in something that would create a legacy or create more income for you. And a lot of us get stuck in that. I did it for a really long time, and I can't say that I regret it, because I've learned a lot from going into the have from the have not. But I'm happy that my life no longer revolves around it, and that I made the decision that I did to downgrade and change and experience life more than driving my internal vehicle towards pursuit of wealth, and trying to another thing that happens too is trying to hoard the money, because even when I was living the more expensive lifestyle, again, proportionally I was still living a little bit below my means, and I was saving, and I was so worried about saving, which is actually an insecurity problem as well, because when you come from a background of poverty, you live in this constant fear, like your money is going to disappear, or like, I don't know how to describe it, but you're always scared to go back to that prior state, which I actually ended up doing on purpose. And I feel so content right now versus 2 or 3 years ago. But, you're so scared it's going to run out. You just stockpile it and you don't do anything with it. And you're scared to have experiences, and you won't spend it, and you won't buy things that make you happy. And, you know, there's this middle ground that I think people need to find. So I hope with all of the stream of consciousness thoughts that you guys got something out of this. The main point is being a have not, in my opinion, is better than being the have. And when J. Cole says love yours, and I don't mean that with no disrespect to anyone out there struggling in debt, and, you know, all the words. I'm sure you guys have heard the song. Having been on both sides of the equation, if I really had to pick one, when he says I think being broke was better, I really think being broke was better. And I'm thankful, having lived on the other side of the equation and getting all these lessons and experiences and all of that. But it's not somewhere I want to stay, and it's not something I want to encourage to other people. I think getting a step or two above where you are, and just feeling the security of paying your bills on time, and the security of having a little bit more there, and just being able to do a few things you like with some good friends and family here and there, you really will find a lot more contentment and happiness in life than chasing something that is designed to make you a hamster on a wheel for somebody else's agenda.